Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC recap of week 7 of the LEC Spring split. We once again had 10 games on the menu and a lot happened. Not all the games were super exciting, if I have to be honest, just a few that really stood out. But let's take a look at all of them anyway really quickly. Some quicker than others because there's more to tell, and highlight some interesting moments as usual. We kicked off with Mad Lions versus Schalke 04, and we saw Mad Lions actually trying to change up the meta a bit. Humanoid picked the Ahri, and I saw a bit of conversation on Twitter why this might be the case, but it's mainly because Everfrost, the item, got a buff, and it works a lot better now with these mid lane mages that can already root somebody up. We've seen before already the Twisted Fate lockup with the yellow card stun, and then the follow-up with Everfrost, but other mages like Veigar or Ahri apparently also really work, and Mad Lions set out to do this. Against Schalke 04, I guess Schalke 04, they had been having a lot of trouble, but they tried to shift it up a bit against Mad Lions. They started off pretty aggressively. They ganked the bot lane twice, and they got 5-2 in kills. Pretty good start for them, but Mad Lions, in the meantime, was playing mostly for these objectives. And I think that overall, this has been a great development for the team, seeing their macro develop. And I have to say though that with Mad Lions, after they got the first 2 Drakes, they kind of dominated every part of the map. They were stronger in the team fights, they were far more ahead in the tower pushes, and they were able to convert that by playing more aggressively. And Schalke kept falling more and more behind. Now, this also had to do because of Armut and Kaiser, who were stepping up massively. They kept finding Schalke 04 and kept getting them off guard. So Schalke was broken open by these two. Armut was unkillable, Kaiser was overpowered, and in the end Mad Lions got a relatively easy victory. Then the second game was Astralis versus Misfits. I can be a bit short about this one because I think that overall Misfits just played incredibly impressively. They once again chose to pick Veteo's Yone, which previously had been played one time before and didn't really live up to the hype then, or if there was any hype. But this time around, Astralis didn't show up at all, and this allowed Misfits to kind of roll over them, if I'm perfectly honest. There was an incredible performance from Veteo on the Yone. They played very aggressively, but not in the skirmish style that we've seen before in other weeks of the split, where they tried to pick fights all across the map and kind of brawl their way through to a victory. But instead, they played more precise. They pinpointed where they wanted to be aggressive. I think at 11 minutes into the game, they had the tower dive already at the tier 2 mid tower when the tier 1 was still up. So you could see really that this Misfits was trying to push Astralis back into their own base, basically. So they had free roam to roam around. And that is basically the tone of the game. Misfits played it incredibly well, and a standout performance from Veteo on the Yone, but also Kobe played very well on the Kai'Sa. So overall, great improvements from that team. Then we went to G2 versus Rogue, which was hyped by many as kind of the match of the week, right? And that's also what I said in my LEC preview video, that this was the video I was, or the game rather, that I was most excited about. And it didn't live up to the hype at all. Rogue did try something spicy, I guess. They tried to switch up things from last time they faced G2. This time they picked Caitlyn and Morgana in the bot lane. And G2 had a pretty similar draft where they kind of went the 1-3-1, but this time they had Wunder on the Sion instead of the Quinn. But it just really never was a close game overall. Before minute 15, Larson was down 0-3 on his Azir, which is his most played champion. It's the champion he's kind of known for in the LEC, right? Because he kept being caught off guard. He was babysat, I guess, a bit. Well, it's not really babysat, but he was just no room was given to him. That's the way I should probably say it. That's the best way to phrase it. Caps was super strong on the Lucian. There were great roams from Mickey and Jankos, who kept applying pressure on that mid lane. And the G2 just simply did not let go of that advantage in the slightest. And I think a great way of showing just how dominant G2 was as a fight in the top lane.
Rogue can do better than they're demonstrating today. And you still have to give them some credit, right? They haven't just fallen over. as Inspired will get obliterated by Jankos. The Solar Flare catches Lost, and the Emperor's Divide does nothing to slow or stop G2. And despite Odo buying some time, the rest of G2 are collapsing, surrounding, and crushing Rogue's hopes. Odo will be the next target as he gets rooted down from a long range. A dash forward from the Gale Force, another Zenith Blade, every single tool left.
I said top lane, but I meant top jungle. But whatever, you got the you got the gist of it. Then we went on to SK versus Vitality, and this game was also not super close. And obviously, there's a bit hype of a match because Crownshot was playing against his former team. Used to play on SK last year, but left to search other opportunities. Didn't find any, but now got subbed in on Vitality. Obviously, as they try to kind of revive their roster, and well, revive they did because. I don't know what SK was doing, but their draft looked a bit weird. Overall, this weekend, their drafts were a bit questionable, I have to say. And against Vitality, I just have to say that this game, they looked so much better than they have in previous weeks. You can see that this is finally a team. This is finally a group of players that find a way to play the game together rather than everybody kind of in a solo queue experience, if I have to be totally honest. And this showed against SK. SK kept trying to find engages, and Vitality just said, okay, well, we'll turn it around. There was a bot lane engage where SK jumped in, and Vitality just walked away out of range a bit, turned around, and destroyed SK. So overall, I have to say that this was a very impressive game from Vitality. SK Gaming, who were coming off of a win streak, obviously, unfortunately did suffer a loss here, but they're still in very good position to make it to the playoffs anyway. Then the final game of that day was XL versus Fnatic, and XL obviously had been having a lot of issues. They were heading into the weekend, I think, on a 5-game win streak. I'm not entirely sure. And Fnatic, they, I guess, compared to XL, they looked a lot better, but still not in that, okay, we're absolutely top 2 team in the LEC kind of shape, I suppose. Still, XL did start pretty proactively. I think Patrick and Tori were trying to apply a lot of pressure on Upset and Hylissang, and I think that's a very good decision from them, because Upset and Hylissang had been having very dominant lanes and had kind of basically won every game in the bot lane, even if they ended up losing. Those two had been playing very well. However, this was turned around pretty soon. You could see that when it came to playing around the map, Fnatic is just leagues ahead of XL, and this also wasn't a really close game, I have to say. XL, Patrick tried his best to drag this team forward. I guess the game ended in the most terrible fashion when XL tried to kind of push down Fnatic in what was the weirdest base race-ish. I'm not entirely sure what they were doing, but Fnatic recognized that they had a much better advantage in whatever XL was trying to do, and they closed out the game in relative easy fashion. Then on day 2, we started with Schalke 04 versus Astralis, and obviously Schalke 04 had even sunken deeper into the hole that is their loss streak. Astralis by this time had been eliminated from playoffs contention, so there wasn't a whole lot on the line for them anymore to lose. Still, it's hard to say what I think about this match without sounding completely condescending to both teams, because this was a very bad game. I think, okay, so the interesting thing is that Broken Blade got to play Fiora on Sion, and I think they highlighted on the broadcast very well that whenever Schalke won their games, it's when Broken Blade had a large damage percentage in the team, so giving him this carry is maybe one way of recognizing and acknowledging that. But it started off pretty shakily for Schalke 04 still. Astralis did strike first, and Schalke had a top lane gang, which they completely butchered and gave Astralis a bit of lead. However, commendably to Schalke 04, obviously, they didn't roll over easily. I think Abedaga positioned very well, won at a Drake fight. Around the second Drake with his Azir to catch Astralis off guard and shove them back into his team, so they could kill off the remaining players of Astralis, which was very good. Still, the game remained very close. Schalke tried to find picks, but they couldn't close those picks. Astralis actually managed to put themselves on Ocean Soul Point. It was a very brawly game. Teams trading lives and objectives pretty randomly, I would say. It didn't have a lot of structure. And yeah, I mean, the game was over. I guess like the one player that has to be commended in this game is Abadaga, who was playing absolutely well overall and tried to carry his team to the victory, which he managed to do. And I think the best way to highlight that is by this clip.
He's sold for Astralis.
It would be so for Astralis, and they are desperate to make it happen. Schalke know they need to prevent this from happening as well, and they are just looking for the engage. Gile is now onto the Dragon. They're going to immediately get Promiscu down. He gets taken low. The onslaught of shadows onto the backline. Abadage finds one. He's found two. He's got a double kill already. He's going for the triple, but it's going to be Broken Blade that picks it up at the end. Neon.
So Schalke got their win. They broke through their loss streak and continued having some hopes of making it to the playoffs, even though percentage-wise the hopes are still not that great. Then we had Vitality versus XL, and this was another close game between two struggling teams. Obviously, the other two teams at the bottom of the standings, but Vitality's loss would mean they would be eliminated, and I guess they felt this because they played very well. They played very proactively, whereas XL played more defensively. I have to say that they, for a while, they responded pretty well. XL got the first two Drakes, but Vitality was ramping up their lead for Crown Shot in terms of gold, and they started taking Drakes back too. They were beating XL in the team fights, and they kept steadily progressing with Vitality outplaying XL. When Vitality got the Soul, they also got the Baron. XL didn't have anything to say in the game anymore, and Labrov and Crowny from the bot lane were playing great in this game. Still not a great showing, I think, from Malic in the mid lane. I think he's still very much holding that team back. But overall, this team is definitely improving. XL is just slipping away further and further. And then the third game was between Fnatic and SK Gaming. And SK had a really confusing draft. Again, as I said earlier, where Fnatic had first pick, they picked Twisted Fate, which is a super great pick, and most of the time it's banned away. And then to reply to this, SK didn't pick the Kaiser Rel, which is considered to be a super overpowered combo. It's a combination I very much am in favor of. I think Rel is incredibly overpowered at the moment. Just her engage combined with the ult is so strong. Your team can do so much damage without the enemies being able to respond, especially if you have their flashes on cooldown, obviously, which is something you can count for. So SK didn't decide to pick up even the Rel. They gave them to Fnatic. I wasn't the only one who was surprised by this. I think Grabs on Twitter was also kind of like, what the fuck is SK doing with with giving away these two champs? Anyway, I wouldn't necessarily say it was because of these picks that Fnatic got away with the game, but it definitely did not help SK at all. Fnatic pulled ahead early on. They were catching SK off guard a few times and upset. Overall, just had a massive game on his Kai'Sa. As I said, in the early game, he was maybe not as explosive as he's been in other games, but overall, he was just playing super solidly again. This guy has been on an absolute tear, I think. Absolutely in contention for the best bot laner in the split at the moment. So, looking overall, it was just a great game from Fnatic. And it was also SK was just not having their weekend, I guess. They were not playing very well around the map, which I had before. And even though Treats was trying to make these plays again and again and again, where he would set up his team, I think that SK was just fallen too hard behind for him to be able to make anything out of it, or rather for the team to make anything out of the engage that Treats set them up for. So, Fnatic 2-0, SK 0-2. In this weekend, and I think for SK that's absolutely a surprise because they had been looking so strong. Then we go to G2 versus Misfits, and G2 had this weird draft, and normally I would say that any other team that drafts this way in the LEC would probably lose the game, but it's G2 because what they did was actually they chose all like losing early game lanes with only Wunder, I guess, having somewhat of an okay matchup, but they picked the Twisted Fate into the Lucian, whereas Lucian is generally considered to be a counted Twisted Fate, and they also had a Kai'Sa Nautilus into the Caitlyn and Braum from Misfits. Now, Misfits did have a real shot at snowballing this game, because if they get this lead early game, it's going to be super difficult for G2 to climb back into the game. And they had to do it through the bot lane, because that is where the biggest advantage would lie for Misfits. But Misfits, even though Kobe and Vander were playing decently, I would say, they didn't get any help from the jungler. Razork was nowhere to be found near the bot lane, which is crazy. Jankos recognized, okay, well, my bot lane is probably going to need some help. And he was there a lot, and it helped them out a lot. But yeah, I don't know what the plan was for Misfits, because their draft, they definitely had an edge there. But they didn't really know how to convert onto this. And G2, as G2 does when you give them some leeway, they easily take this and convert this into a victory, as they did against Misfits as well. They started roaming around the map. Caps and Reckless dealt so much damage on the Kai'Sa and on the Twisted Fate. Jankos also was dealing a lot of damage and farmed a lot, and they kind of played Misfits apart. And I think the best way to show this is just a super clean game overall, and a super clean fight from G2 at 29 minutes into the game.
Gets control of this dragon, has an easier time to start the fight, but the TF ultimate's going to reveal all of Misfits, and now G2 can pick how they start the fight. Caps behind them, has the rapid fire.
There. Will they turn? Vander holding on for now.
They get it.
Burn it down, they can walk away. Misfits need to retreat, but Mickey's going to find the hook onto Vander. That's going to be massive. He's going to throw up the Unbreakable, and he's going to block what he can, but Mickey's already got the ult into the backside. Sion in the midst of the entire team. The sleep going down onto Caps. He's going to get woken up, not quite, by the Caitlyn. Razork can now collapse. The stun card coming in. Razork wants to finish the job, but he buys a bit more time with the stopwatch. Meanwhile, on the backside of the fight, Reckless has taken down Hear It. Now it looks like Razork is next on the menu. Caps, how does he get out of that one? How did that not hit him? The Q!
And then the final match of the day was the match of the week between Rogue and Mad Lions. And boy, did this prove to be a game worthy of being match of the week, with Rogue coming out of the draft really strongly with 3 lanes that had priority and looked like they were just gonna roll over Mad Lions. But Mad Lions was absolutely having none of it. Within 5 minutes, they had already made 4 kills by catching Rogue off guard, and they swung this small advantage that Rogue would have had through the draft back into their own favor, and they had like everything to say across the entire map. So Rogue swapped to going for the objective a bit more. They got a Herald and managed to keep the goal even that way, which is pretty good and actually pretty impressive if you look at it, but still it felt like Mad Lions was the more dominant one in the game. I think that overall Mad Lions did look much stronger. They got 2 Drakes, and they had clean macro, and this is bit strange to say, right? Because normally I'm always very positive, and people generally are very positive about Rogue's macro, but Mad Lions actually had super solid macro in this game too, much like they had in the first game of the week. And they played around, and the match seemed kind of over when Mad Lions had picked up the Ocean Soul, because this is such a big buff, and you always hear the casters say, right, okay, they play towards a win condition of having the Ocean Soul or something like this, right? And that's not for nothing, because once you have this, you get so much healing off the back of this buff. I have to say though, Rogue, when everything seemed lost, I don't know what happened. It's still a mind-blowing moment. You just have to see it for yourselves.
Humanoid off to the side. Can fish for the charm. Does hit Odoamne. Odoamne still walking forward, though, not too concerned about that one. 5K getting lower. Larson off to the side. Inspired, ready to go in. Flash smite on the Udyr up and available. Odoamne acting on the front line, but he's just taking so much damage. They're just deleting him. There's no room now. Inspired into the midst of everyone. The shutdown. Inspired on the chase. Run, Udyr, run! Run, stun, job done! Rogue, find the fight. The double kill follow-up. And that's going to be the Baron. Are you kidding me, Rogue? How did...
And off the back of this, Rogue climbed back into the game. It was unbelievable. Just this one moment where Rogue got a team fight, where Mad Lions just was positioned poorly, obviously against an Aatrox and Orianna. You shouldn't be clumped up together so much. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy to see how Rogue took this small window and used it to completely flip the game around again. And from there on, Rogue was the one playing all around the map, and Rogue was the one having Mad Lions on the back foot. And I think if I looked at how Mad Lions started playing, I also think this kind of got into their heads, which was a very sour moment for them, obviously, to see this game being turned around so much. So I think they were a little bit tilted there. But all credit to Rogue, obviously, for pulling that one off. It was an incredible game, absolutely worthy of being match of the week. They proved us wrong. The Riot script flipped us the bird, as you say. So incredible game overall. Rogue super impressive, and absolutely once again confirmed. Okay, we may have lost against G2 in poor fashion. Like they played really poorly there, but against Mad Lions, boy, did they show that they still had everything that they need to contest with the top. So Rogue won that game, and let's go look at the standings now. Now in a solid first place, we have G2 with a 13-2 score. Rogue are in second place with 12-3 as their score. Mad Lions are now 9-6, and because of how every scenario can possibly play out, given, you know, if you statistically would take every match as a 50-50, Mad Lions can no longer not qualify for playoffs, so they also log a playoff spot. Fnatic is also in a shared third place, but there are some scenarios due to tiebreakers where they could still miss a playoff spot. Fifth is SK with 8-7 in their score. Misfits is now 6th with 6-9. Schalke 04 is also 6-9 in that shared 6th spot. In 8th place, XL continues their loss streak with 5-10 as their score. And then Vitality has 4-11 with last place Astralis, who are no longer able to qualify for their playoff spot at the moment and have a 3-12 score. Now for some thoughts on the team in general. I guess my thoughts on G2 are the same as they ever are. Great team, probably the best in Europe, and they're probably going to win the split. Best of fives are obviously a bit different, so who knows what opposition they might face there. But I still think that if you look at just how dominant they've been overall, pretty easy to say that they are just the strongest, right? Rogue obviously did look super shaky against G2. They did not have their game at all. And even against Mad Lions for a long time, it seemed like Mad Lions would win that game. So I guess these weekends happen. I'm willing to give Rogue a lot of benefit of the doubt here because, first of all, throughout the entire split, this team has been playing phenomenally, and they still also have a lot of room for growth. So I think that this team can only get better. And and as well, if you see how they bounce back, I guess, against Mad Lions, that shows so much resilience, and that also shows a lot of expertise in knowing when and how to make sure that you don't lose the game and go for that window of opportunity there. I still think Rogue look incredibly well. I think that maybe just a shaky weekend, but I guess that happens sometimes, and I still consider them to be easily the second strongest team in the league. Then Mad Lions. Their game against Rogue is absolutely not a game they should have lost, in my opinion. When you have this early game that started off so well, that is a game you should easily win. And I mean, going 1-1 is fine, right? It's not amazing. It's okay. I'm not sure if their RE pick is something that I would want to see again. Humanoid played it twice now and felt like he had no impact at all on the champion, so maybe switched up with a different mage there if you want to try out this Everfrost combination. Could possibly happen. I think overall they're still improving. What impressed me most from Mad Lions, and that's something I'm super happy to see in their development, is their macro game. I've mentioned in this video before. They really look clean over their overall. Fnatic 2-0, obviously great for them. I still think that this team is not on the level where they're going to be able to compete with the G2 or a Rogue, but this bot lane is just insane. Upset and Helsing are absolutely smurfing every game, and I think that this is just the new pillar for Fnatic, and hopefully for them for years to come, right, of which they can build and only grow from here. SK going 0-2 is obviously very bad for them. Especially I think because it was the draft, and I'm not entirely sure how much say the players get in the draft. I think if when I spoke to Jesse's before the split started, he said this is like their team effort. Everybody's weighing in, everybody's pitching. So I guess this was a combined effort, but he always takes responsibility on Twitter, so I'm not entirely sure. But SK's drafts are just very weird, and I think that's definitely something that they need to address before heading into these last week, because they still potentially might miss out on playoffs. I think it's like a 0.2% chance, so it's probably not going to happen. But in the playoffs, it's then or never, right? So they really need to focus that. I still think that overall their team has flourished incredibly well, and I'm still very impressed by their performance overall the split. So this is just like the point they need to focus on next, in my opinion. Make sure you get your drafts on point. Misfits and Schalke 04 then in shared second. As I said, Misfits looked incredibly good. Another great win on Friday. Yeah, there's not much else to say. I guess their loss against G2 is not a loss you like. It's a loss you count for, right? Because you don't think you will win against the likes of G2, especially if you're Misfits who are in that lower region in the LEC. I still think they could have done much more in that game, but overall steady progress from this team, and I'm excited to see where they are gonna land in the last weekend. So Schalke 04 is kind of the opposite. I still think this team looks incredibly poor in their game, which they won against Astralis. Was also a hard-fought victory. It was not a great game at all. And this team, I think, yeah, it's just, it's really tough, man, to see this team falter so hard with so many great names on the roster. So I hope for them that they are obviously able to get these results in. I'm not particularly rooting for any team to make it to the playoffs or not, but just for their sake, obviously, just hope that they find their footing again. Because that's just overall better, right? The more competitive the LEC is, the better it is for the region overall. Then XL, that's horrible. This team has completely lost every sense of how they want to play. They're not finding a new way. They're also not really trying a lot of new things, I have to say. Patrick, poor guy, as I said, he tries so hard to get his team ahead, and you can see him playing so well, out of his mind. And yeah, I'm sorry, but it just feels like the foundation is just not there anymore for XL. Vitality, even though they are one spot below XL, actually, if you look at their upcoming schedule, and I'll touch much more on this on my LEC preview, which is coming out on Thursday next week. Vitality has actually a pretty decent shot at still making it to the playoffs if you look at their schedule. Now, I think that as a team, this team has improved much more. They went 2-0, which is incredibly impressive for a team that had gone winless for weeks on end. And to be able to find that restructure and actually get there, I still think there's a lot more to improve for this team to actually be able to qualify for the playoffs or even have anything to say when they reach the playoffs. So I definitely think that they have a shot at making it. And if you look at the long run, if they are able to keep this roster, I think they have a good shot at doing something more when the summer split comes around. Then Astralis is just Astralis. They gave Schalke 04 a tough time, but Schalke 04 was also playing very badly that game. They're out of playoffs contention, and I don't think this will surprise anybody. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that my camera had gone out of focus because, as I've said before, my camera is on my second monitor and I'm just looking at the camera mostly. So I'm sorry for this, but I hope you still added some value to my words. Anyway, we go to the LEC SuperFantasy standings next. And the top 10 in my lobby. So in first place, we have Vitacast at 4,629 points. LocoX is now in second spot with 4,527 points. Stepan at 4,479 points. I'm still in fourth place with 4,366 points. Bene follows in fifth place with 4,003 points. And Lucky Reed is just a little bit behind him with 3,998 points. Faramir is 7th with 3,908 points. Never Lucky in 8th place with 3,770 points. Then Goldfire 432 in 9th spot with 3,694 points. And Panda Bearleys follows in 10th place with 3,561 points. So those are my thoughts on the LEC matches of the day. Let me know in the comments which games you liked and which standout moments you had, and maybe even a player you want to commend for their play. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me a lot. I'll be releasing a lot of interviews over the course of this week, some of which you will be able to find on this YouTube channel. For others, stay tuned to my Twitter, which you can also find in the description below. And I'll see you all for the LEC preview on Thursday. But in the meantime, as I said, stay tuned for all those interviews.